Hello and welcome back to the Blue Collar Bible Guy podcast. My name's Mike and I'm the Blue Collar Bible Guy. Today we're on day number 66 of our Bible reading challenge of reading through the entire Bible in a year. And we're beginning the book of Judges, reading chapters 1 through 3. Before we get started, let me just ask you to do one thing real simple that helps the podcast grow. If this daily reading challenge has helped you stay in the Word, share the podcast with somebody. Send it to a coworker, send it to someone at church, send it to a friend who wants to read the Bible but just needs a little encouragement. The goal here is simple: more people staying in the Word every single day. All right, let's jump in. Judges 1. The book opens after Joshua's death. Israel is continuing the work of taking the land that God had promised them. But something important begins to happen. Instead of fully obeying God and removing the Canaanite nations, many of the tribes begin allowing them to stay. We see the pattern repeated throughout the chapter. They defeated the enemy, but they didn't remove them. One verse captures the issue clearly. Judges 1:28 reads, "And it came to pass, when Israel was strong, that they put the Canaanites to tribute and did not utterly drive them out." Instead of removing the influences completely, they chose the more convenient compromise. They kept the Canaanites around for labor and economic benefit. But that decision would become a spiritual disaster later on. Compromise often looks practical in the moment, but destructive in the long run. Now, Judges 2, we see the spiritual decline beginning, and this chapter explains what's wrong. The angel of the Lord confronts Israel for their disobedience in verses 2 and 3. "And ye shall make no league with the inhabitants of this land. Ye shall throw down their altars, but ye have not obeyed my voice. Why have ye done this? Wherefore I also said, I will not drive them out from before you, but they shall be as thorns in your sides, and their gods shall be a snare unto you." The people were warned clearly. If they allowed these pagan influences to remain, it would eventually lead them into idolatry. And sadly, that's exactly what happened. Then we see one of the most sobering verses in the entire Old Testament. Verse number 10 says, "And also all the generation were gathered unto their fathers. And there arose another generation after them, which knew not the Lord, nor yet the works which he had done for Israel." In just one generation after Joshua, people were already growing up without knowing what God had done. Faith had not been passed down, and that's how quickly spiritual drift can happen. But even in Israel's failure, we see God's mercy. In verse number 16, it says, "Nevertheless, the Lord raised up judges which delivered them out of the hand of those that spoiled them." God continued to rescue his people, even when they were unfaithful. Now, moving ahead to Judges 3, God raises deliverers. Here is where God introduces the first judges. These are leaders God raised up to deliver Israel from their enemies. First, we meet Othniel, the first judge. In Judges 3:9 we read, "And when the children of Israel cried unto the Lord raised up a deliverer to the children of Israel, who delivered them, even Othniel the son of Kenaz, Caleb's younger brother." Then we see the story of Ehud, who delivers Israel from the Moabites. After 18 years of oppression, the people cry out to God again. In Judges 3:15 it says, "But when the children of Israel cried unto the Lord raised them up a deliverer, Ehud the son of Gera, a Benjaminite, a man left-handed." Ehud eventually defeats the Moabite king Eglon and brings relief to Israel. Then we briefly meet Shamgar, another judge who defeats 600 Philistines with an ox goad. Even in Israel's repeated failure, God repeatedly shows grace and patience. What we're seeing in Judges is that these first chapters reveal the pattern that will define the entire book. 1. Israel turns away from God. 2. God allows oppression. 3. The people cry out. 4. God raises a deliverer. 5. There's peace. And 6. Then the cycle repeats. Judges is a picture of what happens when people slowly drift from God. Some hard truths we learn from these chapters. Spiritual decline rarely begins with open rebellion. It usually starts with partial obedience. Allowing things in your life that you know shouldn't be there, delaying obedience to something that God has already made clear, or letting influences remain that slowly shape your thinking. Israel didn't abandon God overnight. They simply stopped finishing what God told them to do. And here's your challenge today. Ask yourself this question honestly. Is there anything in my life that represents partial obedience? Something God's made very clear, but you've delayed dealing with. Maybe it's a habit, maybe it's a relationship, maybe it's an attitude. Ask God to give you the courage to finish what obedience requires. Because small compromises today can create big consequences tomorrow. And it's easy to start compromising out there in the workforce. When you hear people talking the way they talk, and you see the culture sliding the way it's sliding, it's easy to think that we're doing something that's not that major when we try to fit right in. But it builds over time and becomes a huge stronghold that Satan has in your life to keep you from glorifying God. So find those compromises and deal with them today. I want to remind you one more time to please share the podcast with a friend. And if you have any comments, leave them below or email me at bluecollarbibleguy@gmail.com. As I close, stay in the Word, stay faithful, and remember, small obedience done daily builds a strong faith over time. And I will see you next time.